Since Aaron Rodgers has decided to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's been some more information that has come out about exactly why the Steelers were comfortable bringing in Aaron Rodgers. Because I think there are a lot of questions regarding Rodgers when it comes to his age, where he is in his career, the lack of success with the Jets, which I don't think is necessarily a lot to do with Rodgers necessarily. Some of the blame would go on him, but I think he still played pretty good football last year. There's a lot of questions about that. And so clearly with the Steelers bringing him in, they have at least enough comfortability to make the decision to actually sign him and have him as their quarterback in 2025. And there was an article put out by Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, and he shared some information about exactly what went into the Steelers making the decision to sign Rodgers. And I'm just going to share a short part here. I'll leave the entire article linked in the description down below. But first off, Breer did mention they discussed Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins, and Daniel Jones as options. But they clearly decided Rodgers was a solid option. And who knows if Stafford would have even wanted to come to Pittsburgh. But here is another quote. Their study of Rodgers showed a little more than even they expected. Early in the 2024 season, the Achilles and a hamstring injury to follow clearly hampered him. But as time wore on, even with the Jets struggling, the Steelers saw Rodgers returning to form. In the Jets' Halloween game against the Texans, he made a few big-time back shoulder throws. He played well in both Dolphins games. In Week 16 against the Jaguars, Pittsburgh saw vintage Rodgers with a late go-ahead touchdown throw to Davante Adams really standing out. So the Steelers seem to think that as the season went on, Rodgers improved, Rodgers got better, which I do agree with. And considering the state of the Steelers roster, the Steelers organization, when you have a top 10 defense, I think that you can, make a bet like someone on Rodgers where he's had so much success in his career, and he still played pretty good football last year, 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And so I think that if you're Mike Tomlin and the stability you already have in Pittsburgh and, having a solid defense last year, if you can get someone of Rodgers' caliber who has that experience, who has that playoff experience, then I think he's someone that could, get you over the hump of winning a playoff game, which hasn't happened for a while in Pittsburgh with them losing 4 of the last 5 years in the wild card round. I think that if you're Mike Tomlin, if you're the different Steelers decision makers, when you're assessing your different options, you have a pretty solid roster overall. And, you could have just gone the route of trying to find your, next young quarterback, which maybe they found in 6th rounder Will Howard. It's a little late, though, to find guys. Typically, you never know. Brock Purdy, guys like that can happen. Tom Brady, of course. But it makes a lot of sense to take a swing on Rodgers, especially if you still think he has some of that, juice left from earlier in his career. And I think that one of the biggest things here is the contract they gave Aaron Rodgers. Because if they were having to pay him $50 million a year, I don't think they would have brought him in just because of where he is in his career. But the fact that they're only going to have to pay him, $13.65 million base salary, $10 million of it's guaranteed. I mean, that's an easy decision in my mind if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're getting an all-time great. Yes, he's at the later stages of his career. He probably won't be playing as good as he used to. But for that kind of money in this, day and age, when you look at the quarterbacks around the NFL, how much those guys are making, for a one-year deal, I think it's an easy decision if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I was looking at different, quarterback contracts. And at overthecap.com, they have Rodgers at $14.15 million per year, which is, a little more than that base salary. He can get up to $19.5 million with incentives. A lot of that, though, they have to have a ton of success. Like $1.5 million would be him winning MVP, $1.5 million for winning a Super Bowl with 50% play time, and then $1 million for AFC title game win with 50% play time. So $3.5 million of those incentives, or actually $4 million of those incentives, would, mean Rodgers AFC title game, Super Bowl MVP. So the incentives are pretty tough to get. So they may not have to pay that if he doesn't, find that level of success. But comparing it on over the cap with him at $14.15 million, it's about the same range as Daniel Jones is making this year, which is pretty crazy. Rodgers and Daniel Jones. Rodgers making $6 million less than Justin Fields. Rodgers is making 42% of what Sam Darnold will be making and 37% of what Geno Smith will be making. So those guys are close to, $33 to $37 million. And so this is such a bargain, even for Aaron Rodgers at this stage of his career. I think he easily could have gotten the $30 million if he felt like he needed it. Now, maybe one of the reasons the Steelers were fine with this is because they knew Rodgers would take a really, really cheap deal, and maybe if they had to pay $30+ million, they'd say no. But I think if the news had come out that Rodgers wanted $30 million a year, I mean, that's still a cheap deal relative to the rest of these quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think that's a massive part of it, where some teams are paying quarterbacks $50 million. You're getting Aaron Rodgers for $13.65 base salary million. I mean, why not take the risk if you're the Steelers in this situation where you don't have to pay a ton of money and you get a year of an all-time great? I really don't think that this is in any way a bad idea. Now, does this mean it's going to 100% be guaranteed success? No, but that's how it always is in the NFL. You never know what could happen come playoff time. And I just think because of the success and the stability the Steelers do have just consistently with Mike Tomlin having a winning record, you never know what could happen if you have Aaron Rodgers come playoff time. And maybe you don't have the same chance of success that you would have had with Rodgers back in the day where, if Rodgers was 30 years old playing at that level, then this is a team that I think would be Super Bowl favorites. But if he can even just take a little bit of a step forward this year, a year after, coming back from his ACL injury, I think there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful here for this Pittsburgh Steelers organization. But if you want more Steelers content, NFL content, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys next time.